Hello everyone, this afternoon on The Marketplace, International Monetary Fund pushes board meeting on Ghana to this Friday, January 19. We'll tell you why. Also coming up, Treasury bills oversubscribed by a whopping 46.7%, following a further decline in inflation and a debt restructuring agreement between Ghana and its bilateral creditors. My name is Daryl. Kwawu. Thanks for being with us. Details coming up. And thanks for staying with us, everyone. The International Monetary Fund has rescheduled its board meeting on Ghana to this Friday, January 19. George Afi has more on what has resulted in the fund taking this decision despite the country reaching a deal with its external creditors.
Executive Board of the IMF should have met this Thursday, January 18, 2024. However, Joy Business is learning that some of the Executive Board members have made a case for the meeting to be pushed a day forward. This is to give them more time to review Ghana's documents submitted by the IMF staff. Therefore, the change in date has nothing to do with Ghana not meeting the conditions for the board to meet on its program or concerns about the deal reached with its creditors. We also understand that the executive board members need at least 3 days to review the country's documents, and since Monday is a holiday in USA, the pushback was necessary. This is because the holiday would mean that the mandatory 3 days will be cut by a day. Sources close to the fund have told Joy Business that everything is in place for the executive board to meet and carry out Ghana's first review under the fund program this Friday. This should mean that by next Wednesday, about $600 million should hit Bank of Ghana's account. That is, if the country is able to pass this first review by the IMF on how it has fared under the fund program.
To his partner Deloitte Ghana, he joins us on Zoom with some analysis. Thanks for joining us here. Our sources telling us the IMF Executive Board needs a minimum of 3 days, 3 working days to carry out the necessary scrutiny and procedural review of Ghana's program and the debt restructuring agreement reached with external creditors. What would they be looking out for, do you think?
Yeah, thank you very much, and good afternoon to you and your cherished US and then listeners. So I guess it will just go back to the basics. I think we keep it very simple. That some of the key factors or drivers that took us to the program included things like our rising debt level, which we have a target to bring it down from over 70% as was reported in the previous budget to about 55% following the debt restructuring program. So that's a key target. And for us to be able to achieve that, we need a debt relief of about $10.5 billion. And so the process of engaging external lenders and also the process that we started with domestic debt restructuring was necessary in order to take us to the target. We are not there yet. In the last budget statement that was presented, our debt GP ratio has dropped from over 70% to about 66%. So there has been progress that has been made. And I think the good news is that on Friday, we were able to reach a deal with our bilateral creditors. If you look at the combination or the split components of our external, significant portion of it, about half of it, is owed to Eurobond holders. And so if half of that is owed to Eurobond holders, and then about another quarter owed to what we call multilateral creditors. So these two key debt holders are primary to us securing a deal. And so for us to make some progress towards that, it's important. I think the good thing is, though the IMF program at the board level meeting has been postponed, the communication was that it is not because we have failed to meet a benchmark or Ghana has got some challenge with some of the document that was submitted. What's important for government is to look at one or two key things. The first one is our communication regarding the IMF program and the engagement with the IMF. We have to be consistent. Historically or previously, the communication has been a little bit inconsistent. I like the process that has happened so far. there's been some silence on the part of government entities or institutions that used to communicate about the program because the inconsistency does not help. So we have to ensure that we are going through a consistent communication process. So that's the first one. And then the second one is to also for us to focus on operationalizing the budget statement. It is one thing presenting budget to Parliament and getting approval. It's another thing making sure that appropriation bills are passed, and they are not just passed, but the relevant revenue agencies are implementing or configuring their system to implement these laws that are passed. Because in addition to our debt challenges, we were also advised to watch or work on our revenue base. Our revenue base has been low, and we have significantly relied on tax revenue. And so if in the short to medium term, there is no other source of revenue, then we have to operationalize our tax revenues as we have presented in the budget statement. So whilst we are waiting for the IMF program or feedback from the IMF, we have to watch the consistency in our communication and ensure that we avoid all the negative news that's coming from our market or our country, because it also affects how these documents are scrutinized. Mind you, the communication is that IMF needs time to scrutinize the documents. So where information from the country or information from other sources inconsistent with the document that has been submitted, we are going to have challenges. So I think that's something that we should mind.
Yeah, the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, has been speaking with my colleague, George Afi. That interview will air on Thursday. He describes the deal reached with external creditors as a major turning point for the economy. I mean, how significantly would the next $600 million turn the economy around?
Yeah, so I think I agree. It's a major turning point. And that's because of one or two reasons. The first one is that initially there was a very strong debate and some disagreement around the cut-off date. And so we heard in the news that all external credit committee members have agreed to December 2022 as the cut-off date for the debt restructuring date. And I think for me, it is consistent because that was the date or the period that we also sent communication to our external creditors that we are suspending payment of principal and interest. So that obviously becomes the cut-off date. But usually, because these creditors committee members are not consistent in terms of whatever they are looking out for, we had this debate. But I think that the good step is that they all agreed to the cut-off date. So that's a very good step. The second thing is that once they've all agreed to terms, then it starts the process of us accelerating our engagement with the IMF, because it's almost like a condition that was not written, but agreeing on terms with external creditors was actually critical in us getting onto the period of receiving the tranches. We've only received the first tranche. The second tranche has been waiting from for government to reduce reliance on domestic borrowing. I think we've heard in the news that what government subscribed, local bonds have been oversubscribed, and treasury bills are oversubscribed. This is good sign in one way or the other, but even more importantly, it is only limiting credit that are supposed to be available to the private business, what we call crowding out. And it's also likely to increase domestic credit, cost of credit to other businesses or individuals like everybody. So for me, it's a transparency for the government reliance on domestic borrowing, and it will also give us some lead in terms of our forex requirements.
Well, we still do not have any more information on the agreement reached with the external creditors, but the Finance Minister did not rule out the December 2022 as the cut-off date for restructuring Ghana's debt. It also appears Ghana will start servicing its debts after the 4-year moratorium. Payment will, however, commence after 5 years, we are told. Interest rates on these debts will likely be pegged between 2 and 3%, between 2 to 3%. Your thoughts on this and what the implications are?
That's actually a remarkable one, and it is positive from where I sit. If you recall, one of the reasons why it was quite difficult to go to the international capital market was that our risk had gone up. So whilst the external credit agencies were downgrading us, the cost of credit that was going to be available to Ghana was going to be high. So we are borrowing at about 9% roughly. And so if you go to market and you're borrowing at 15% on Euro bonds of 1 billion, 2 billion. That's quite significant. So for me, if you are going to be structured and then interest commitment is going to go significantly below the 8%, average 8 to 9%, and coming to about 3% thereabouts, that margin alone gives us a lot of savings for us to use and put into other uses. So the reason for going to an IMF program and similar program, debt restructuring that we are going through now, is to create fiscal space, because we need money for other things. We need money to support the productive sector of the economy. So once we get that fiscal space from this debt restructuring process and IMF program, we will use the money for other productive sectors of the economy.
All right, thank you so much, Yaolate, partner, Deloitte Ghana. I appreciate your time with us this afternoon. Well, following a further decline in headline inflation, interest rates eased again as treasury bills were oversubscribed by a whopping 46.7%. That's according to the latest auction results by the Bank of Ghana. Let's bring in Patrick Edemagama, who is head of trading at Republic Securities. And Patrick, the results from last Friday showed that demand for the short-term instruments surged following an agreement between the country and its bilateral creditors on the restructuring of external debt. Tell us how the auction went.
Good afternoon, Daryl. So we saw that the government raised a total of 3.86 billion, and then that rose by 46.73 in terms of the oversubscription. The 91-day dipped a bit by 15 basis points to clear at 29.04%. The 182-day also dipped by 22 basis points to clear at 31.52. And then the 364-day also fell slightly by 26 basis points to close at 32.08%. We can see that the disinflation pressure was the main cause of this, but we expect this trend to also continue as we have this IMF news coming in.
Right. So what's the anticipation for this week? We expect the IMF board to hold a meeting over Ghana this Friday.
Yes, we expect the same trend where the rates are expected to drop and fall. In 2 weeks to come, the policy rate will also be announced. So we expect that to also follow the same trend, or at least be maintained. With the news coming, investors are also listening very carefully and following and knowing the trend. You can even see the volumes that are coming in. People are trying to lock in at a higher rate for the long dated ones. That's the 182-day and the 364-day instead of going for the 91-day.
All right, and turning to the stock market, the Ghana Stock Exchange's composite index lost 0.05% last week to record an annual return of negative 0.09%. Overall, we are told the weekly turnover total 13.6 million cedis across 23 counters. What do you read into this, Patrick?
Well, as we have the main drivers being Benso Oil Palm, Ecobank Ghana, and Cow Bank, we still expect the financial stocks to drive the market down slightly. However, we are seeing a lot of traction in MTN and then New Gold ETF. These two equities also have good prospects that can pull the market up. So we expect the financial stocks to continue their 2023 performance, and then we'll see how their fundamentals will clear in terms of the Q4 or the final year releases.
Anything else we should be on the lookout for this week?
Well, we should also look out for the activity in ETI stocks. We've seen some already happening in the market. That's ETI. There has been some activities coming up on the market, so we should be on the lookout for stocks like
anything
ETI.
Specific in there?
Well, we are seeing that there's been demand coming onto the market, and we've seen the supply side also showing up. And as this continues, we noticed that ETI paid dividend last year because of their 2022 performance. And if they follow that same trend, that will make the stock more desirable to the market.
All right. Patrick Edemagama is head of trading at Republic Securities. Thanks for the updates on the markets. Well, next we are turning to trade and a bit to realize Africa's single market whilst transforming the continent's economy through value addition. The Africa Prosperity Network, in collaboration with the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat, is set to organize the Africa Prosperity Dialogues in Ghana from the 25th to the 27th of January 2024. The meeting will offer top business leaders, heads of international development institutions, and social change makers a unique platform to deliberate and proffer comprehensive policies aimed at boosting intra-Africa trade. Now, addressing the media ahead of the three-day conference, founder and CEO of the Africa Prosperity Network, Gabi Asare Otridako, said the event will map up strategic, systematic, and action-oriented economic ecosystem that leads to real prosperity on the continent.
We had the first one in January 2023. The focus then was how we if you like, elevate AFCFTA from ambition to action. And the compact, which was put together by our partners led by Dr. Eugene Owusu, with the UNDP, ECA, and the rest of them, and the AFCFTA, the compact that came out of the end of the three-day retreat was presented to the AU, and they adopted it. And what is important about that is that the AU recognizes that the conversations that take place at the Africa Prosperity Dialogues between business leaders and political leaders is relevant to pushing the FCFTA agenda. Okay, so let's not let it not be lost on us in terms of the importance of the conversations that we are having here. Fortunately for us, we fall between Davos and the AU summit. The next AU summit, it's I believe February 17 to 18. Our conversation is 25th to 27th of January. And whatever comes out of here, the compact, it will be tabled at the next AU summit, and we hope that there will be actionable things that will come out of this year's dialogues.
All right, you're watching The Marketplace. We're in a new week of the Joy Business Advisory Series, and this time we're tackling taxes. As you know, we have some taxes kicking in this year. Businesses and individuals are already raising red flags. And in studio with me to discuss how your business can navigate the recent taxes is Wisdom Pano, who is Associate Director, Tax and Regulatory Services, Deloitte. Thanks so much for coming to the studio to talk about this subject. Well, let's begin by talking about the tax environment in general. How would you describe it?
Well, good afternoon, and good afternoon to your viewers. So the Ghanaian tax environment, so of course the fiscal space, going with where we have been as a country, working to recover the economy. I would describe it as quite fluid at the moment. We are having a lot of changes coming in, looking at how we can maximize our tax revenue. The government has launched the medium-term revenue strategy. That's a roadmap from 2024 to 2027, working on how we can ramp up our taxes, domestic tax revenue mobilization to around 18% tax to GDP. So it's still a very fluid space at the moment, but then we are looking at what happens next.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about the IMF program at the beginning of this show, and of course, the reason we are seeing the introduction of new taxes is because we have to make some money, right? But the individuals and businesses are complaining about it. So talk to us about how these new taxes are going to impact individuals and SMEs, for instance.
All right. So thank you. So if you look at 2024, for individuals, we do not have a lot of changes impacting individual personal income tax. So what we've had is a rejig of the graduated tax rates, which is the personal income tax rates applicable to individuals. The new rate has been increased from 402 Ghana cedis a month to 490 cedis, which is the exempt rate, and that is just to align to the new minimum wage. So for an individual income tax perspective, not much, but then the main
It has ripple effects.
Yes.
On their pockets, right?
So, and that's what I'm coming to.
Yeah.
So, the main changes we've seen this year, 2024, is that we are having to pay more taxes on a number of goods and services that we buy, and that would be an effect on individuals' disposable income. So you have your disposable income, you would need to bring out more to pay for certain services like insurance, which was exempt from VAT, but in 2024 would attract VAT. So non-life insurance will attract VAT from 2024. Air travel was exempt from local air travel, exempt from VAT. Now there will be VAT on that. We are looking at a tax for excise tax, which is imposed on vehicles. So emission tax, 100 cedis per annum. So those are some taxes that would mean that individuals would have to pay more of their disposable income in getting those goods and services. Then for businesses, small businesses in particular, businesses are also economic agents buying these services in town, and they would need to pay more to get their insurance. They would need to pay more to get imported printed matter. They would need to pay more for domestic air travel. So there would be impact on individuals. You would have to allocate more of your budget on these services, and also for small businesses would have to allocate some more of their budgets in getting services that attracting new taxes this year.
Well, I guess the big question is, how do they navigate these taxes? Individuals, small businesses?
Right. So, so for individuals, it's important that individuals are looking at how to get the most out of the tax system. So your income, which is subject to income tax, the rates has been provided for, but then there are some reliefs from the income tax law that would allow individuals to get some reliefs in terms of their taxes, and a number of them. So we have marriage relief, and so the advice is that for individuals, we have to look at what are the opportunities to reduce the tax burden, because that is what the law has already provided for. One of the key ones, which I would mention as the first, is that we have in our Income Tax Act 896, a relief from mortgage interest on residential premises. So if you are paying a loan, the interest on that loan for one residential premises in Ghana, you are able to deduct the interest against your income, your assessable income before tax. That is one key and likely significant relief that individuals can look out for. So if you are in this category paying some loan for housing, then you get your documents, approach your tax office, provide your details, and then you'll be able to deduct that upfront against your assessable income before the impact of taxes. And then there are others.
Well, it's interesting because most people don't know this, right? People don't know this.
Yeah, so we are in a system where we are not assessing these reliefs as much. So in 2024, where we are already talking about the impact of taxes, you should be looking out for getting as much relief from your assessable income.
Yeah, time to look it up. So how about small businesses? What reliefs can they explore?
Yeah, so for small businesses, typically you would have your micro business, sole proprietor, or owned by two persons. There are some incentives. That businesses can look out for. So one key one is the Young Entrepreneur Incentive, which the Income Tax Act provides, where if you are a young entrepreneur not more than 35 years, you get an exemption, tax exemption for 5 years of operating. You do not have to pay tax on the business income. But this is limited to a number of industries. If you are operating in the ICT space, waste processing, tourism, manufacturing, and others, you would be able to access this exemption. But an important point to note is that if you are not known to the tax office, then you cannot assess these taxes. So for small businesses would always have 3 obligations, what I categorize as 3 obligations. You have an obligation to register with the tax office, you have an obligation to keep records, and you have an obligation to comply with your taxes. If you are registered, known to the tax office, if you are keeping records, if you are complying, then you'll be able to assess some of these incentives and reliefs that we have in the Tax Act.
All right. There are so many taxes adding to the already existing ones. So how do you keep up with the taxes to fulfill your tax obligations?
Yeah, so from an individual point of view, so currently the Ghana Revenue Authority has a tax portal, so online tax portal, where what we hitherto had as your tax identification number, your TIN, has now been linked to your Ghana card personal identification number, so your Ghana card PIN. So there is already that linkage. On the GRA tax portal, you will be able to log in and set up your user account and have a profile where you can file your taxes. Now, once you have that, you can approach a tax office, provide details for reliefs. I mentioned we have the mortgage interest, but there are others. You have marriage relief if you are married. You would not believe it, but if you are married, you have 1,200 Ghana cedis relief for the year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so if you are married or you have 2 dependent kids, then you have that available to you. There are others, such as if you are a disabled person, you can have 25% of your income from employment or business given to you as a relief. So if you are a disabled person and you are in some business or you are in employment, you should be assessing this relief by one, having being known to the tax office, having an account, and then providing details where you can assess this relief. Now, if you are a business, I mentioned 3 obligations. Registration.
You have just 30 seconds. Yeah.
Okay, so registration, compliance, and record keeping. If you are keeping your records, then you would be able to assess reliefs or simplified tax models such as the presumptive tax, where you pay 3% of your revenue as tax due from you. But if you do not keep records, you can...
We'll continue this conversation tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's lots to learn. I'm learning so much today. Wisdom Kwawu is Associate Director, Tax and Regulatory Services at Deloitte. Appreciate your time. And that's the marketplace, everyone. More news on our website, myjoyonline.com/business. More on that exclusive with Ken of Reata on our website, myjoyonline.com/business. See you same time tomorrow.